What's up? This is Jeremy Allen Gould, and this is the newest episode of the Who's to Say podcast. For many years, I booked a ton of amazing bands because I freaking love music. Even though I don't do that anymore, I've stayed friends with many of these artists, as well as some new ones along the way. This is a place to hear their stories. Get into it, guys. Oh, and who's to say? Hey, it's Jeremy Allen Gould with the Who's to Say podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this newest episode. Today we welcome John Parker from the band Nodes of Ranvier. You might know Nodes of Ranvier from the label Face Down Records as well as Victory Records. It was good to catch up with John. I've known him for quite a while. Booked Nodes quite a few times back in the day. So it was a nice conversation talking about the past, the present, and the future. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with John Parker. With that said, John, who's to say?
Hey, Jeremy. How's life been treating you?
Man, it's been pretty interesting, pretty cool. I'm down here in Florida. Moved down here probably 11 years ago. And, man, my life's so different than what it was. In a good way.
So you moved from... But where were you before Florida?
Oh, I was in Wichita. That's where I booked you guys. And then I moved.
Family there, yeah.
Oh, that's right. I remember you saying that now that you said that.
Cousins, a couple cousins in the Nant, yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. So I'm Jacksonville now. Been here for about 11 years now, which is crazy to think it's flown by so fast.
That's awesome. It is crazy because I remember when you made that move to Florida, just kind of following you on social media and you're like, yeah, you got into a warmer climate.
Yeah, I know you're not. I know up there, man. I can't imagine. I do not miss the cold weather one bit. But
it's not. Yeah, you don't really miss it. I find ways to try to put up with it. There is a certain romance about it. The seasonal changes.
Sure.
One extreme to the next, but it sure does wreak havoc as you get older. I don't know, I've lived here my whole life, and every winter I still feel like I'm not quite used to this.
yeah, that first brisk morning, I'm sure it when it hits you in the face.
It does.
So I was trying to think back, kind of when we first met. I know I was booking shows in Wichita, but it was like, I want to say the tour that you guys came was with Reflux, I believe.
I know there was an Agony Scene one where we played at a skate park.
Oh, that's right.
Reflux, yeah. And I think the Agony Scene one was also with Becoming the Archetype.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
And I've seen those guys have been active again, which is always, I love.
Yes, and their new record is unbelievable. It's so good.
Check it out, yeah.
Yeah, I need to have them on here.
Guys. Sure.
I was trying to think that that's kind of that Reflux show. It kind of stands out in my mind because that wound up being kind of a who's who of, with the guys from Reflux like Ash, Onan Sumerian and
yes,
Tosin with Animals as leaders, and I think Evan was in like Animosity after that, and then I wound up meeting you guys, which I was a big fan of anyway, and then Terry, your bass player, wound up he co-pro'd with me on a ton of shows, and so.
Okay, yeah, yep. Yeah, Terry was very active in the booking agency out of Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah. So him and I, we would co-pro on a lot of shows. He got me hooked up with a lot of stuff. So we worked together for 4 years probably.
Sure.
So that is such a monumental night for me. As bizarre as it sounds, it's just kind of one of those changing of the guards for me in my life, which was really cool.
That's awesome. So that would have been the first time, if not the first time in Wichita, definitely the first awesome show in Wichita.
Oh, absolutely.
That was always the struggle, is working with promoters that if you had a promoter that maybe didn't value your show that week, you get put on the wayside. And a lot of promoters just were overworked because maybe they were the only promoter in the area. But for whatever reason, like you could tell, when you could tell shows that were promoted by people that cared about the bands or just cared about the scene where they lived, and that was definitely apparent with your show. So we always, man, it made such a huge difference. Just when you go into a place and you can tell that there's a community there, and even if the kids aren't necessarily stoked on your band, they're at least stoked on the show, and everybody wins. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's good to hear. I've always kind of prided myself in that in a weird way. I just always looked at it from the perspective that, I wanted to provide kids the show, what shows meant to me when I was a kid, like something that just blew my mind. And so, like, for me,
it's all about.
Yeah, I took it as an honor, really, honestly, more than anything. But can I ask you on a side note, with how often would promoters not be into it? I mean, like, that's just bizarre to me in my mind.
I mean, I'm turning 39 next week, and when I was in Nodes, I was much younger, and I still see it today. I mean, it's like, why are these people even involved in booking shows? Like, why is this show happening? Is this a question you find yourself asking sometimes when you show up to a place. And like, whose ego is being increased? But anyways, it's the promoters was a make or break thing. And then there were, back then there were street teams,
Yep.
who you talk about street teams now, it's such a foreign idea. I mean, it was basically like, I don't know, it was like maybe a microcosm of what became the influencers or whatever. Yeah, it's very interesting to think how vastly different it is. And to touch on the point earlier about giving something to the scene that you received early on, something to hand off because you appreciated it so much or whatever. Like, man, that's you remember, like, your friends who brought you to that first show or whoever exposed you to music early on in your life. And like, if you have a passion for it that way, you're going to be a very effective promoter. And that's, that does make all the difference, because it's even like having kids now and exposing them to music that I appreciated, back then. It's like, or whatever kind of media it is, it's like such a, I don't know, man, like, you get a little butt hurt when they don't appreciate, like those younger whippersnappers. I don't know. It's, every once in a while you see a glimpse of, like, they get it. Like, I see how this began, like, maybe this band influenced this band that I like now. And it's so awesome to see kind of that, that little bit of hand-me-down interest spark in a young person. So, I mean, even if they're not young, anyone, if you can expose them to the music scene and get them to kind of appreciate something like you did, that's like a bond that you can never break.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's really cool. Let's go back a little bit. Just tell me kind of how I know I've heard a podcast with you before on this, but I just kind of want to go back over what brought you into the whole music world.
Oh man. It was, for me, growing up, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I was exposed. My dad enjoyed music. He kind of went through that whole reformation that a lot of people go through, where they kind of ditch the secular music that they have, and then just go along with whatever was on the Christian radio or whatever. And at that time in the 70s, there was kind of you had a ton of from Bob Dylan to take your pick, that were putting out these religious albums, because I think people knew that, like, people's musical taste was very much directed by their spirituality. So it's so interesting, like, Dion DiMucci and I mean, all these guys that were relatively, like, unheard of in the Christian music scene were releasing albums that were entirely gospel. Like, you don't hear about that today. I mean, it's just like, Imagine Dragons going to put out a gospel album. I mean, maybe they could, but it's just not. It doesn't seem feasible anymore. So so my dad had had some records off on the side that were his old collection, but then it was mostly what I was exposed to was Russ Taff, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant. Yeah, I mean, Russ Taff. I mean, the dude's voice, like,
I know.
Charlie Peacock, who's now doing, a lot of production stuff. And they had a lot, Steve Taylor, like that guy.
Love Steve Taylor.
I don't care who you are, Steve Taylor, like go back and listen to some of that old stuff. Like he's a genius. You can't really, you can't. I mean, Jesus is for losers. Like how controversial that must have been. you know, like,
dude,
So, there was a little Petra, a little Striper. That stuff was a little heavier. Like I didn't get a lot of edgy stuff from my father, but my parents had an appreciation for music. My mom did some traveling. She actually in college was a part of a vocal group called Gentle Praise. I didn't get any vocal talent from my mother, but I think I got maybe an ear for music, through her. And then it was just, it just became music fandom. So when I was old enough to go to the Christian bookstore, and I remember in Sioux Falls, the Christian bookstore had, remember that band Rackets and Drapes?
Yes, I saw them with Living Sacrifice and Clank.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Clank's so good. Oh my gosh. Anyways, so I remember going to the Christian bookstore. I've learned that there were not records, CDs, albums behind the desk that they couldn't put out on it. And when I learned about that, it was like,
it's the Peep Show.
Gosh, there's a whole new world. It's like the adult section.
The adult section
at the video store
for teenagers.
There's no curtains or peeping. Yeah, it's.
It sucks.
So once I discovered that, and then Tooth and Nail Records and stuff like that, it was for me kind of my own interests. I remember buying the first Five Iron Frenzy album and the first maybe it was the second MXPX album. Then I bought the first one. Getting exposed to that stuff, kind of the punk rock, ska type stuff, and then for me, moving into heavier stuff, probably in 7th or 8th grade, that first full-length Zayo's Splinter Shards, The Birth of Separation that Sean Jonas was on, that I remember knowing that there was something like, it was innate to like, this is the type of stuff. I remember the sound reminded me of what I thought Kiss would sound like when I saw a picture of Kiss for the first time.
I totally get it.
And my young brain, and then I was like, wow, this is really different territory. And I kept revisiting it, and I remember like the percussion, like Jesse Smith's drum stylings and use of the China cymbal really just hit the nail on the head for me. And then it became, and it was Snapcase. And then I got into, obviously Zayo's, catalog that came, and Living Sacrifice. And it goes, somebody asked me to do like a top 10 album thing a couple years ago. And that, from everything from Slick Shoes to Dillinger Escape Plan, like that is one of the hardest things to pick 10 out.
That is insanely hard.
But yeah, man, it was kind of like, you have friends that expose. I remember, meeting Ryan, the drummer from Nodes, and us exchanging our music collections, because at that time, you had CD binders or whatever, and you could easily do that, and burning the stuff that I didn't have, that he did, and then starting Nodes and stuff like that. That was such a cool aspect of like finding out what another musician appreciates, and then using those, being aware of those influences, and then creating stuff on your own too. It was such a interesting time. I don't know if that's necessary. I won't say that that's lost anymore, but with everything that you can do digitally and stuff like that, it seems like the craft has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember actually a side note on that Zayo record, not the Splinter, but the Where Blood and Fire when it came out.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Alternative Press. I could be wrong. I just used to get magazines like Punk Planet and all that stuff, and usually Christian bands they would hate on. But I think Alternative Press one time, and I was a fan of Zayo before this. Like I saw them before Splinter with their previous singer Eric.
Okay.
I'd seen them at a festival or whatever, so I was familiar with them and I liked them. But anyway, my whole point was the review on, I think it was an AP. The whole review was one sentence long, and it said, "This band sounds like Godzilla," and that's literally all it was. And I was like,
leaves a little to interpretation.
But I was like, what an absolutely brilliant review, because if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you don't. Like, and I've always stuck with that. That's always stuck in my mind. And like a buddy of mine and I started a website a while back, reviews and stuff. And we wanted to do 1 sentence reviews because I thought it's just like, it's like if you get to the point, you know, I'm like, you can't get any better than this record sounds like Godzilla. Like, man, what a
yeah, that's brilliant.
Anyway, that was a side note, but sweet. Okay, so once you got into all that, what led you to beginning Nodes, or is that kind of where it went, or were you in bands before that?
So I was in a lot of bands before that, not all at one time. I was always kind of a monogamous band guy. I like to really focus on
Sure.
you know, one thing at a time. I was not skipping around here to there, and it was interesting because most of the bands I was in, even from a very early period, I was able to do, not, I wouldn't say professional recordings with, but album length recordings. So that was, I remember like the very first band ever, you know, playing in a me and some friends from school started like a 3-piece band, and we practiced in our drummer's mom's house. And then one day we got the brilliant idea. Our school that we went to let out earlier than the public schools did in our town. And so we set up one day in the garage and planned it that we would open the garage door as the public school buses came by, so that like we'd have a crowd. An audience. I wouldn't say a crowd. Yeah, we annoyed kids getting off their bus that day. That was pretty funny. But that was like the first. Yeah, and then we were recording ourselves on a handy cam. And then I can't remember how we got the audio off of that onto like a tape, because a lot of cars back then still had tape decks.
Yep.
And so I just remember like sitting back for the first time and hearing something that you recorded with your friends. Just like, it was visceral. There was something.
Absolutely.
I don't know. There was something about that. And then, you know, so fun. I would say it's so pure and so fun. And then as you get older and you take it a little bit further and you run into things like deadlines and budgets and things like that, you're like, how do I maintain that fun? And if I've lost that fun, it's like the fourth Indiana Jones movie. Should I just make it to make it, or should I let it stay where it was and not ruin the memory? So that's the challenge. And I think too that plays into why I've always like focused on one project at a time, is because I don't think that my energies can be best used if I displace them in multiple directions. But yeah, it was just playing in bands and then starting to realize the value in playing with people that were better than you. I got a lot of good pointers, and just learned a ton from not only going to shows and watching people who were better than me, but also playing with people who, you know, not just better with the instrument, but like the songwriting approaches and trying to draw from as much as you can. And where I grew up in Sioux Falls, we're basically we're right between Minneapolis and Omaha, Nebraska. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Omaha, Nebraska. And we would catch a lot of tours. We just, you know, we're in a healthy spot, and especially in the winter, if something would get canceled, we have pop-up shows. Somebody might break down in the area, and then we had a lot of promoters that were good at doing last-minute stuff or adding bands to shows, and just the exposure we had to how eclectic shows were back then too. I remember seeing Cool Hand Luke play with. Gosh dang, I can't remember. But I remember only liking Cool Hand Luke. I'd never actually heard them before. I'd heard of them, but I'd never heard them recorded or in a live setting. And they played with a bunch of bands that weren't anything like them. And then I made sure next time I was at Cornerstone, I caught all their shows, and it was awesome. So we had a scene that was, I mean, you could do a show in a garage, 100 kids would show up, no questions asked, regardless of the season, and everyone would sell merch. Everyone would win. It was great. The community, the scene was very connected, and so it was easy to want to get into that if you had some musical abilities, you know, to want to start a band, because everything surrounding it was so awesome. We had Sioux City as an hour to the south, so you could play, you know, the VFW Hall in Sioux City was really a popular place to play. It's actually where I met Kyle Beneke, who was on the last Nodes record, and he was in System Failure. He was playing with System Failure when I first met him. And so there were, the Omaha kids would come up to Sioux City, the Sioux Falls kids would come down to Sioux City, and it just grew from there. It was so cool to, you know, Fargo as well. I remember doing a short tour with Boy Wonder, and going up and playing Minot, North Dakota and Fargo. And so there was just there's so much activity, and a lot of it converged on Sioux Falls. We had a venue called the Pomp Room, and it was a popular enough place, a big enough place that Aerosmith played a secret show at this place. Yeah, just out of the blue one time they played a set out here. Now it's a parking ramp, but it was a great venue. I saw everyone from Real Big Fish to Real Big Fish, Less Than Jake came through. Link 80 before the singer died. So many good bands came through there. It was absolutely crazy. So that was like right as I was up and coming. So the place closed down when I was old enough to actually, maybe would have been able to play there. But Sioux Falls, we were just lucky. Had such a burgeoning scene and a very active scene. And then the older crowd, they would support. I mean, when Nodes got started and we started making a name for ourselves, we got some support from the older guys, people who came before us, and we tried to pay our respects. And so that was cool. The scene was just wonderful. And so there was a lot of motivation to start, and a lot of people did start bands. And even if they didn't go nationally, just playing regionally, they did really well for themselves. So it was cool to see that. That's
awesome. What when you guys started, why'd you go to the direction you went? Is it kind of, were you just all metalheads, or was it like, hey, this is what we relate to?
Well, so how Note started, we were just off the heels of a band that had broken up called Edict of Milan. And that was more of like a screamo project. There's a gentleman in Sioux Falls who owns a record store now called Total Drag. His name is Dan Nissen. It's an awesome record store. Check it out if you're ever in the area. He was in a band also called Exam. They were known as Examination but then everybody started calling them Exam. They got big because Converge wore, one of the Converge guys wore one of their shirts in one of the Jane Doe videos they did. But they were well respected. Anyway, so Dan went off to that band, but Dan and I played together in Edict of Milan. And so we had the heavy music was definitely like we wanted, we knew we wanted to play in aggressive bands and whatever. And my thing was like I wanted to go more metal. And so Thomas, our first singer, and myself, I don't know, Thomas he was in his first year in college at the University of Sioux Falls, and he met Ryan early on in that first year and found out that Ryan was a drummer. I think he might have been in jazz band or something in high school and had a drum kit. And our first practice was just Ryan, myself, and Thomas in the band room at USF making fools of ourselves because nobody would take it. It was our first practice, and it was like, what are we even doing? We didn't have material. We were just kind of like plugging things in, and so it was a very awkward start. And then after that, we moved when we started to solidify some material, moved it into my parents' basement. And our practice space was so cramped because at the time we had auxiliary percussion. So we had 2 drummers, bass player, 2 guitar players, and a singer. Ooh. And the newspaper, our local newspaper, the Argus Leader, came by, and they wanted to do an article on us for an upcoming show or something. And they couldn't get a camera shot in our practice space that actually featured all. They didn't have a fisheye lens or something. And so we were crammed in there pretty good. But we always worked with what we had, which was oftentimes very little. But yeah, it was the metal thing. I think we were all, because I remember like Ryan was he was always a big Metallica. Yeah. I mean, like classic Metallica is what he was structured around. But then he was into Earth Crisis and the modern kind of hardcore underground scene stuff. And like I said, we traded our CD collections and found out where from Poison the Well to Zao and all the new stuff that was coming out. Hatebreed and all that stuff was in our Rolodex. So Nodes was kind of birthed from a lot of different musical approaches in the metal world, I guess. And I think it was, we did know that we wanted to be more on the metal side of things, but I think we probably blended, we fell into that metalcore genre, just like, so much that was going on. But we didn't have any metalcore bands in Sioux Falls, so to speak, metalcore. It was a big punk rock and screamo. So like a lot of the bands were very screamo, like Combat Wounded Veteran and Oh gosh, now I'm trying to think of the song that Get the Kid with the Sideburns. It was like about some kid getting beat up at a Earth Crisis show. I forget the name of this band, but yeah, it was Seisha, and Seisha was really big. Love Lost But Not Forgotten.
Yep.
Which kind of begat that whole Boston scene, like Botch and Cave In and Converge. Obviously, all those bands were really big with the kids in the scene. Everybody kind of looked up to those bands too. And I remember Botch came through Sioux Falls one time. It was just crazy. We had Mastodon in a basement that barely fit.
Whoa.
Every standing shoulder to shoulder, like 35 of us. It was bonkers. And this was before Remission came out. So I remember hearing all the songs off Remission and then waiting 8 months for that CD to come out. Like,
that's hysterical.
Dude, it was nuts. So yeah, like again, the Sioux Falls scene, like it was a wonder. But anyways, Nodes was birthed out of a band breaking up, and then a couple other bands. Thomas had been in a band that broke up around the same time, so it was just good timing. And then them getting into college, like Thomas meeting Ryan in college, and I'm trying to remember, we had our friend Zach Poppinga, who was the first other guitar player in the band. He had been in kind of a Rod Laver kind of a project, kind of fit in with that whole like rapcore metal that was going on. Yeah, rap rock or mallcore or whatever you want to call it. Super talented. Like, this dude was awesome. He was older than all of us, and just had his technical aptitude for guitar and equipment and stuff was well beyond ours. But so we were lucky to have him. And then we had 4 bass players. Jeremy, 4 bass players before we played our first show. So it was a long ride.
I bet it
and
was.
By the time the band came to an end, we had like 18 members. I think I did the math. And so
Wow. And that's not because you're difficult to work with. I know that. It was difficult to, I mean, people, it's hard. Like, you want to do this thing, make no money, and spend a lot of time on the road. Yep.
Yep.
Who came up with the name, or how did that come up? I've always been curious.
Yeah, so one of the bass players we had, whose name was also John at the time, we were in high school together. So our senior year, we were taking a course, anatomy and physiology, and we saw it in a book, in our anatomy book, Nodes of Ranvier, and we never thought that we'd have to explain it to anybody. We just needed a band name so we could get on a bill and play some shows. So,
yeah. Well, I thought it stood out for sure.
Well, good. It was funny too, because a lot of bands, especially regionally, had "of" in the name. It was something of something, So I was in a band called Edict of Milan right before Nodes of Ranvier. So maybe it was just it was a common thread. But it was awesome. There wasn't any real I was like, why'd you name your kid that? It was like, I like the way it sounded.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I remember specifically seeing, hearing the name, but then when I didn't hear the first record, but I heard the second one with the Derek Hess artwork on it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what drew me to it, because I was like, this is really cool looking. And I thought the band name was awesome. So it was kind of one of those, as a double whammy. It's like, great artwork, great name, I'm probably going to be into it type of thing. That's kind of what I thought in my head, and I wound up being. So
that's awesome, dude. When we got the email from Derek Hess that he wanted to work with us on our work, we had put out our debut album, Lost Senses More Innocence, on Face Down. That was, scattershot to say the least. We recorded that thing in like a weekend and a half, and it was just to kind of we didn't ever really anticipate it being released officially. We did our own release. We actually had another label at the time take like 4 songs off of it that they needed to go with another band to release like a split EP thing. And so Face Down was nice enough, even though that stuff had already occurred, they still wanted it. And I think we removed a ambient noise track, and then that became Lost Senses More Innocence. All those songs were recorded in the same sessions, but it was definitely not something we ever foresaw a label like Face Down actually putting out. So when the next album, the self-titled record with the Derek Hess artwork came out, we had started to formulate, we were had done some touring. We had a label behind us now, and just that, like I said before, you know, that expectation of like, now this is for real. Like now you're writing. We didn't have a hard deadline, but we knew that we needed to have an album out by such and such a time and work towards that. So the mentality, there was a shift. We were out now. None of us were in high school anymore. It's like, what are we doing with our lives? And so this was the thing. And we had such great support from Facedown. Oh my gosh. It was just, looking back on that, it's like, oh geez, we wouldn't have been anything with it. We wouldn't have lasted as long or done as much. Yeah. But the difference between the first album and the second album became much more polished and had a different sound, not on purpose, but it was literally what we were drawing from, what we were writing. It just made more sense. It wasn't quite as scattershot in the formulation of songs and songwriting. That was, little did we know that record was really kind of what tied us to, I guess if you ask the average Nodes listener that's listened to all albums, it seems like that's the one that they kind of gravitate to. So
I would agree with that.
And when Derek Hess reached out to us, I remember we had dial-up internet. I literally had to solder a piece on our modem at the time that had broken and like solder it back together so our internet would work in this house that we were renting with a practice space in it. And
that's awesome.
Derek Hess reached out. We thought it was a spoof. We thought it was somebody that knew that we liked Derek Hess and was just sending us an email with a silly, you know, name that they had somehow gotten to be their own. And but it became, after a while, I think somebody else contacted us and we're like, hey, did Derek reach out to you? And we're like, yeah, but we didn't think it was actually him. So we're like, oh wait, totally we emailed back and we're like, yeah, dude, we would love to have you. So we got to actually meet Derek. So the photographs that are in that record, are from a Cleveland, Ohio show that Derek Hess put on, or was part of, that featured Norma Jean headlined when they didn't have a singer at the time, Me Without You, Norma Jean, and Every Time I Die. And we were like the second or third band on the lineup. It was crazy, dude. That was like, at that point, that was the best show we'd ever been a part of. So we got to meet Derek Hess, got to meet all these other bands that we were, you know, just big fans of. And then the photography was taken that night for that album. And then it was also, Derek Hess had done the artwork for a video collaboration that was just coming out on DVD. Oh, I can't remember what it was called, but there was like a Sick of It All video, MXPX video, and they were all done. Darren Doan?
God Doan? Money? Was it God Money?
Oh, jeez. Was that the name of the music video collection?
Oh, no. I know what you're talking about.
So the cover of the DVD is like a guy grasping a film reel, like squeezing it or whatever.
Yeah, that's God. I think that's the God Money soundtrack.
Is it? Okay.
I think so.
Anyways, I think that it was super cool. So they were releasing it that night too, or something. Yeah, they were like, or it just had been released, so you could buy it there, and it was you get to meet Darren Doan, and that was super cool. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. I forgot about the Darren Doan aspect of that until just now, but that was a super cool night. And then we drove straight home, but like all this like, you know, awesome, like, oh my gosh, we're doing, like, we were meant to do this. We're so lucky to be on this show, and things are happening. And then you just drive. It was dead of winter. He just drives straight. I remember Me Without You going to the next show, and they passed us and waved at us on the road, and we were just like, bye, take us with you, bye.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Well, I don't want to go backwards, but what brought you guys to Facedown? I was just always curious how that kind of materialized, and kind of, was there any other labels interested and involved and all that stuff? I just kind of was curious.
Right. So I was in my senior year of high school, and I remember I'd made a pact with myself that I wasn't going to take the SATs or ACTs, because I'm like, I'm doing the band thing, and just on principle, that's what I'm focusing on. And my goal was to sign a deal my senior year, and we had been playing a lot of shows locally and regionally, and we put a press pack together, and it literally contained a VHS tape.
That's hilarious.
A VHS tape of, there was probably 3 or 4 shows, you know, clips of 3 or 4 shows. I'm sure we sent off to Solid State, but Face On Records ended up being really the preeminent response that we got back. There were a few other small labels that we had talked to up until that point, but when Facedown got back to us, it was like, for real? So
That's amazing.
I talked to Jason, and he sent. I remember, him like after he signed us, he let us look through the catalog, and he said, yeah, whatever you guys want, we'll send you this welcoming pack or whatever. And just from the very, very get go, I mean, here's a bunch of ignorant kids from Sioux Falls, South Dakota that just want to make some noise and get out of their, out of the Midwest if possible, and do some other things. I mean, we love the Midwest, but we wanted to see how far we could take this thing. And Jason just, that relationship was amazing. It was the right place, right time. Yeah. So we, like I said, nothing but love for Face Down Records, and it's so awesome to see them continuing on. And there's been some other bands from Sioux Falls that have been on Face Down Records. There's a band called Colossus.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was super awesome. It's just great to see that continuing, because it's, I mean, call it a legacy, call it whatever you want, like that stuff, especially looking past over the last 2.5-3 years and what's gone on in the world. Like, what matters more than people's connection with other people's creativity and
Absolutely.
Music? And it's just, it's so, and you really do come back and realize how important it is when you're sitting at your place alone, not being able to go to work or, live life as you would, normally like to. But, so kudos to them. And I know Jason and Virginia are living it up now, and it's well deserved. And
that's awesome.
Beautiful family out there. And it's, we stay connected. Every once in a while we hear from them, and it's always a good thing.
That's awesome. Did you ever tour with the band In Due Time?
Yes, very briefly. I think
because they were on what's the subsidiary?
Strike First.
Yeah, Strike First. So Cole and Chase, they go to my church. I'm really good friends with them. Cole's one of my best friends. And we were talking about Nodes, and he's like, I think we toured with them once or whatever. But anyway, my whole point was they said the same stuff about Face Down. They've always just been like, it was like a godsend no matter what, like in terms of like relationships and friendships, and kind of those type of people that like it betters your life, and that's all they've ever said. So it's just it's really I would love to meet Jason at some point. I think that'd be really cool. He's
one of those people that you can get along with very easily.
Yeah. That's so cool. Very, very, very awesome.
A lot of integrity wrapped up in their operation, and they've done so much good for someone. Just the scene in general, but their love for people and music is pretty much unmatched. We had an opportunity to be on some deal with other labels and contracts and stuff like that, and it never would. We wouldn't have lasted without the Face Down being kind of our foundational start to things. What your questions yesterday, when I was kind of glancing through them, it made me think. It also reminded me when we were going towards the fourth record, and knowing that our contract was up with Face Down, and trying to figure out what the future held. We were talking to Abacus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had a great lawyer that we actually got in touch through. It was because he also lived in Lawrence, Kansas. He was an entertainment lawyer. He knew Terry really well. Yeah. And so we were working with him. His name was Chip. Super cool dude. Guy was awesome. Helped us out so much. And don't ever go into legal contracts on anything blind. So he was a huge tool for us. But the Abacus contract was sent to us while the main guy over there, I can't remember if his name was Ray or something. I don't know. I remember Ray at Abacus. But anyways, they were super cool. But the contract they sent to us he was in Japan or something, and so he wasn't able to proofread it. He had somebody else like ghostwrite it and send it. But it actually had, I can't remember the band. It was actually a contract for another band.
That's hysterical.
We ended up getting it. So while they were making corrections, then Victory Records came in, and Chip said, I remember, and a lawyer saying this, he's like, when I read this contract, I fell off my chair. I was like, whoa. I'm like, so that's a good thing. He's like, yeah, dude, I've never seen Victory with a contract like this. It's like very non-committal, low risk. And I was like, dude, I couldn't explain why, but thankfully, being what transpired after that, we weren't negatively affected by that. But we probably would have signed with Abacus had their contract not had to go back to them and do the whole review thing. And
that's hysterical.
Yeah.
What's
Well,
what brought the victory? And those did they primarily come after you? After were they basically like, hey, did you let them know in advance that your face down contract was done, or was it just kind of like over the years friendships and stuff? Or
I think there was like enough knowledge of us in the scene or whatever, and the Victory was known for
yeah,
snatching up bands in that metal core genre or whatever, and so we felt we felt like we were getting recognized for having been active and working as hard as we. I mean, we were on the road 6 months of the year for like 5 years, and a little bit more than that. It's just the average in that 5 years time span.
yeah,
But yeah, so we'd been out and about, and then we went from it was an interesting change from a label that we were very very connected with, interconnected with not only the people that ran it but the people that worked in it. Worked in the
yeah,
mail room. And we would go out there and you'd meet these people and they'd hop in the van with you and go to the next 3 shows, and you develop these relationships with people just that were on staff at Face Down. And with Victory, it was you hope that was the case there, but we never even got to meet anybody over there. We tried. I know we played through Chicago. They had an in-house booking agent that ended up like booking 3/4 of a tour for us, and then one day the guy got canned and nobody told us, and then we found out the hard way, and then we tried to fill in the holes on this tour, and
oh
it was
my,
just it was kind of like the perfect storm of releasing this fourth album, and it should have been a climactic event, but it ended up being kind of like a whoa, like what just happened? Like
yeah,
kind of bomb went off, and we were still trying to. At the time when we signed with Victory, and they knew it. Was full disclosure, we didn't have a vocalist, so our first promo picture was just 4 guys before Kyle had actually joined the band. We were doing tryouts, but yeah, we told them we're like right now we're vocalists less, so we were worried that was gonna affect our ability to actually work with Victory. But anyways,
yeah,
being fine that way, and we were really proud of that last album. It was sonically a lot different than everything else we'd ever done, but it was kind of emblematic of the band up until that point. We were working with new people on every record, and Ryan, it was the first album that Ryan and I hadn't written together, or worked on together. There was obviously we had Nick Thomas from Spill Canvas was on the second record, and he helped us write a lot of that record. So with Ryan not being there and working with a new percussionist, there was a lot of newness. So then the new record label and all this stuff, it was a whirlwind, but it was also a really cool creative time. And I look back at it as it was a tumultuous time, but it was also exciting and probably everything it should have been when you're in a metal band from South Dakota.
yeah. That actually brings me to my next question or questions. What's your favorite song and favorite record that you did with Nodes? Like, just.
Whew. Geez, that's there. So, to play the music that I like to play the most is probably off of Self-Titled. I realize that as I get older, my dexterity is because I haven't the bands that I'm playing in now, they're more power metal than speed oriented, but we still play a lot of fast stuff. But trying to play songs off that last album now, it's like I need to spend more time sitting down with that stuff. So when we do reunion stuff, we end up playing a lot of things off of the 2 middle records, so the Self-Titled and the Years to Come.
Years to Come.
And, those 2 records really hold the stuff that was like you remember where you were when you were like what you were thinking about, what was going on in your life when you kind of constructed that material. So yeah, definitely. And as far as a favorite song, Don't Blink is obviously.
Yeah. I was gonna say
that was a big one because I remember Face Down when they got our press pack. In Sioux Falls, it was always a big thing. The crowd would clap along with stuff. There were always parts of songs that instead of, I don't know what different music scenes kind of did different things. But Jason told us when he saw that press pack video, he hadn't seen so many people clapping at the same time, like clapping in unison along with the music. It was just a simple thing, right? And we took it for granted because we thought that was normal everywhere. But the Don't Blink song kind of had a lot of opportunities for that. So that was one that was a a lot of fun because, not only did we love the song, but also the crowd participation aspect of it. And it's, to this day, it's just one of those songs that, you start playing it and people get into it. I'd have to say that Don't Blink is probably that song.
Yeah, I listened to that yesterday actually. That's such an incredible song. I don't know, there's something about it that just and it's just I love how it's all over the place, but it just like once it kicks in, it's just, I don't know, it's just one of the, like you said, it's just one of those that you just either you gravitate to it immediately. It's just it's a banger.
I tried to think about too, like if we were to do some more material, which we've bantered the idea around, but that energy and that approach to writing, I don't know, man. It's hard to know if it would just be forced anymore, or it's really hard to even mentally capture that time, in a bottle, so to speak. And like you'd want to, you always want to progress as a musician and in your creativity, but it's like, I don't know if anything we do now would really be notes, So it's like,
no, I understand. I get it. Plus your tastes have changed and you're not a 20-year-old kid anymore with, lofty ambitions of being, Metallica Junior, it's like
exactly. I've changed. Yep.
So I want to kind of talk about some of the shows that you guys did, the tours and stuff. What can you name me some of the most memorable tours that you had, or opportunities that you got to play with, bands that you looked up to? Sorry.
No, absolutely. We got to play locally one time with Zayo when Dan wasn't in the band, so it would have been like,
Corey?
What era was that? Like before, Corey, exactly. Yeah, we saw them play in Omaha with Corey, and then they came through Sioux Falls on a subsequent tour, and we got to play with. So that was a dream come true. That was actually still while I was in high school. But the tours that really stood out were like when we met the guys in Reflux and Tosin. Oh my gosh, like playing with Tosin every night is like, why am I even here? The dude was playing a loop pedal, a boomerang pedal, through 2 half-stack rigs, and he was recording his own rhythm track and then doing leads over it every night. Like it was amazing. That dude was a machine. I mean, he's still a machine, but anyways, that we ended up doing a tour with that German band Caliban.
Caliban, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, Caliban, and then Reflux again. And I remember Caliban, like they had, I can't remember how it worked, but they didn't have to lug a trailer around. They just had a minivan. So every day on the road to the next show, at some point, Caliban would just go flying by us in this Chrysler, and we were like, because they didn't have as much weight to tell the rest of it. So
that's awesome.
It was so much fun. Oh my gosh, the Caliban tour was awesome. That was a lot of fun.
What's the biggest tour that you guys did? Was that, you say that one? Or?
That Agony Scene tour. Might have been that tour, or the when we co-headlined, we did kind of co-headline tour with Sinai Beach. There was a lot of good shows on those tours.
Yeah.
Gosh, there was also, after Self-Titled came out, we did a headlining tour with a band called Arms Bend Back. I had heard it, but I think they were on Trustkill or something. So there was a lot of good press around that tour. We also, gosh, at one time, the last tour we did, I remember the last tour we did was so rough. We had to come home early from it. And I remember watching commercials for it on MTV2, and I'm sitting at home like, couldn't finish that tour. That it was the promotion of the thing. It's just something happened, but I'm trying to remember who was all on that last tour. It was East Coast. It was winter. It was a rough. That was a rough go.
What year was that?
That would have been 2007.
That's kind of, I feel like 2007, 2008, I felt like that's when the economy started to take a shit. And so I think it just started to get weird. That's when I got out of the biz, if you will.
Yeah.
It was just
right before the housing bubble.
Yeah. It was like, I would have these monster tours, and then people started to not show up because they couldn't afford to go to the shows. And it was just like, I just vividly remember that time.
Yeah, that took its toll, and it was, it was problematic because we had some new people in the band that this was their first tour, and it was on, it was supporting this Victory release record, and we were just finding out, like, yeah, it was kind of like the perfect storm of everything coming crashing at the same time. And there wasn't an accident involved or anything like that. So, thank God there wasn't any, bodily harm has played a factor in any of this. But it was just, it was nobody. The shows were very, very sparse, and the writing was kind of on the wall. There were some external stressors, relative to some of the new people that had come into the band, and we just didn't want anybody to what's the word? Well, you kind of you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yep. That's so true. So true.
Yeah. Yeah. So
when did I guess that was a precursor to the end, I would assume, and that was kind of maybe the writing on the wall. Is that kind of what did you guys just decide to call it quits and then get a real job per se, or is that kind of what led to that?
Yeah, I decided to go to college. I decided that I was going to do the college thing, and I just wanted to, try to focus on something that would be a little more advantageous to a future in. I actually went to school for criminal justice. I basically just wanted to get a bachelor's degree in something that interested me, and then I'm not using my degree specific to what I'm doing now. But it was nice to have the education under my belt. But it's that ended up being, and I was still able to be involved in music, but I wasn't on the road. So once the band got put to bed, we played our last show. It was 2000. Was it New Year's Eve, 2007 or 2008? It would have been New Year's Eve. So the beginning, we literally played into 2008. And that was the last, at least for that period, that was the final Node show. And it was an awesome last show, but man, it was bittersweet. It was putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to bed all at once, and it happened relatively fast, especially when we kind of thought we were on this trajectory of, now we're on Victory Records, and we've got a lot of what we thought we had a lot of momentum, and then. Then the economy stuff, it did what it did. And some of us, I know our other guitar player, Jake, at the time moved out to Colorado. And so, it just kind of dispersed, and on good terms, people were, obviously it sucked for what it was, but everybody is still friends. And Ryan and I now are still, the Nodes drummer and we've been working on projects now ever since Nodes broke up. And it's been, I actually live just down the street from him. I remodeled the house and moved
That's
into
awesome.
it. So we're neighbors again. And it's pretty cool. Sioux Falls has proven to be a very good place. And that's something I learned through touring, was the place that I called home was pretty special, getting out there and seeing. Cool. I love, places in Colorado and California and stuff. But when it came to like, where do I want to live and start a family and into my adulthood, and the Sioux Falls had a much greater charm, having seen what else was out there in the U.S. So
that's cool.
Glad I had that experience. Yeah.
Please tell Ryan I said hello. It's been a while since
I will
talked to him
definitely
as well.
Definitely.
So you mentioned doing show. So is that what brought March in Arms about? Is that kind of?
Yeah. We had started. Ryan always had a concept for doing a band. He was inspired a lot by an Iced Earth. I think it was a double album Iced Earth did at one time, about famous battles and war history. Yeah. And so this was before Sabaton was around and stuff. And so Ryan kind of had a collection of ideas, and he had briefly mentioned it to me one time while he was in Nodes. And so we had a band that we started together called Old Ironside, and Ryan was still playing drums. And we did that for a couple of years, and we had a vocalist that made an exit from the band. And as we were kind of looking at what do we want to do going forward, I was like, well, Ryan, you've had this idea, like, why don't we put it to use now? And so he transitioned from drums to guitar and singing. So we actually have three guitarists. So it's a little bit of three-part harmony ability here and there. And it's a power metal. Yeah, it's basically a power metal band, March in Arms. And we put out 2 albums. We put out an album during COVID, which was what it was. But the Europeans seem to like it quite a bit.
Hey,
They love
power metal.
Yeah, we self-released it, and then we got signed to a label called RFL Records, which is probably not something that most anybody has ever heard of, but they just kind of helped us with they're genuinely good dudes that are just fans of music, and
That's awesome.
they kind of pushed it a little further than we would have been able to on our own. So yeah, we've stayed active, and we still play live shows and get a kick out of that, and it's been good. It was especially good during COVID to kind of still have that creative outlet. Done me a lot of good over the years. It's just not ever really putting music to bed has been great, because I know anybody who's been a musician, like when you're left to your own devices. I mean, some people are really good at learning all of the stuff about studio production and stuff like that. I need other people to play with. Like I notice when I'm playing by myself, I might come up with a riff, but when it comes to actually putting things together, I get so much more inspired when there's like a song idea, and in that process, that's when it's just stuff that comes out of that process off the cuff. You could have a riff. I have riffs that I wrote back when I was in Nodes that I've never utilized, but then something will come up. There's an inspiration that comes out of that creative process when you're in the same room with people and something's being created right there in front of you. That's when, I don't know, at least for me, that's where I shine. So it's now more, because it's more concept. Ryan will bring more formulated song ideas, so there's less of that back and forth. Like Nodes was just like, all right, we got this riff, okay, this song sounds good so far, what's the next riff? Or just keep playing until something works. But with Marching Arms, it's much more formulaic, like just the song structure and stuff, and all the songs have a military history aspect to it. So that's kind of cool. It's allowed us to make some interesting music videos. That's awesome on YouTube that we've been able to do with some friends that are good with video production. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's not easy, but it's still a lot of fun. And it's like that creative process that you just never really want to let go of, and having that outlet with friends is Sioux Falls isn't necessarily full of a lot of musicians that have that mindset. And that's the hardest thing. You put more than two people in a room and you're going to have disagreements, right? But we're lucky to have a good core of 5 guys that have just kind of low drama, always gotten along. And so we got to work with that as much as we can. It's been a blessing.
Totally. And you're more mature now, you're not...
I'd like to think a little more.
Yeah, the things that mattered then don't matter now,
We still watch South Park. It's like, nothing really ever changes.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys play quite a few shows with that, or is it just kind of like here and there shows? Or
yeah, we played 2 weeks ago down in Sioux City, and so we play as much as we can. I should say it's probably more like once every 2 months, 2-3 months we play out. During COVID it was less, sure. But between things that friends will ask you to do and opening for someone, we got to play with Unleash the Archers a couple years ago. Like a show like Town, you got to play that show.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
We played this summer with Anvil. That was kind of interesting.
Oh, dude, I love that movie. Yeah. That movie's amazing.
That documentary that they did.
It's so heartwarming and endearing. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Every musician, anyone that's ever been on the road can identify with that.
Absolutely. I that's probably in my top 10 movies. Like, honestly, like it's just so, I don't know what it is about it. I freaking gravitate to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you to go back, I just thought about, you were asking about like the tours that were the biggest. We got asked to do a little leg with Integrity. Which
wow.
That, like, everyone growing up in hardcore and metal, it's like you're aware of Integrity. And so that was, I think it was Remembering Never, us, Integrity, and I can't remember. I think there was a 4th band, but there was all, we kind of did a West Coast thing with them. And I know that like our spot on that tour ended right before they played Portland. And the story that we heard was like on the way home, the Integrity went up and played this show, and like the singer like took off with all the money from the tour, and they got beat up by the Sharps, and then it was just like,
oh my goodness,
just one day away from all this excitement. But there were a lot of good shows on, especially in Southern California with Integrity. Like that was interesting. Kind of a world that we'd only ever heard of, and now getting exposed to, playing with these bands that were a band that was a pioneer in how old were we when that band first started out? So yeah, it was just crazy to like find yourself in that spot where you're touring with Integrity. Like it's
That's bizarre, but awesome.
never saw that coming. Yep.
So, did Notes just play a reunion recently, or I thought I saw something?
So we did the first reunion show we ever did was in 2017 for Face Down Fest's 20-year anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
Jason put together an awesome show at the Glass House, and a bunch of us got together and flew out there and played. It was that was so much fun. And then recently we had we were kind of, we had a few promoters around the country saying they could get us on Furnace Fest, and so we kind of got together around the idea that we would like to play Furnace Fest because we never got to. But so we went out and we played a show in Mansfield, Ohio, for a buddy or a guy that became a buddy that put us on his booking agency and was trying to get us into the right contacts with Furnace Fest and stuff like that. But the Furnace Fest thing didn't come to fruition. But we got to play some shows out of the deal. So once we announced that we were on this booking agency, a local guy who does a festival called Four Winds Fest asked us to headline one of the two nights. So it was interesting because the first night was headlined by Spill Canvas, which was our contemporaries back in the day, and Nick had been in the band, the lead singer, and then they played the Friday night headline, and then we played the Saturday night headline, and it was cool because unlike in 2017, we had all of the vocalists that had been involved on the records got to be involved in this show. So we kind of played. Yeah, we played an era, like our set was like, from the early era to the last era. And so we had Thomas, Nick, and Kyle were all involved in the vocal. They all got on the mic that night. So that was really fun. It was an outdoor show, the first Four Winds Fest since COVID. It was a blast. So that that kept us busy through the summer, and had a lot of fun with it. There's some good live videos from Four Winds Festival there that you can see Thomas crowd surfing. Thomas has a penchant for crowd surfing, which is interesting because he got into Thomas got into like bluegrass music. I mean, he's a super talented guy. This guy can sing and play guitar, and I'm trying to remember the name of the band. It's gosh, I can't recall it right off the top of my head at the moment, but he put out a full-length album and had a backing band and everything, and just like super talented. It was awesome. There was a summer that he put that album out. I can't remember if it was 2018 or something. They were playing all the big festivals in the region, and yeah, they awesome. Like he has such a talent. So that's the kind of music that he's been performing. So then to come back and do Node stuff, it is definitely not something that he has, or a lot of us have kept up with. So it was like, we had to practice at it. So,
that's awesome.
But he's still a showman. He still got out there and killed it. So, and then Nick Murphy, from the Years era, he got out there and killed it. He's he had been in a band called Tennessee Murder Club after Nodes, and I don't know if he's still involved in music right now, but yeah, it was great to see them because he had a younger brother who was in the band, and had a very tragic accident as a linesman. And so he was there. Both his younger brothers are twins, and the one that played bass for us, Brady, on the self-titled album, he was on the final album. Brady played bass and did the sung vocals on that album, and so we got to see all of them, and I hadn't seen them for years and years, and so that was probably, honestly, for me, more so than playing the show, was seeing these guys who I had not had contact with for so long, that you had written music with and toured with in the past. That was really the coolest part of the night for me. So it was emotional all around, and we had a good time, and I think we put on a good show. But we worked all summer to get there. So
that's awesome. That sounds really cool, actually. I think that's it'd be cool to see. I mean, it's I just have fond memories of the past and kind of, the shows, and it's like, it's cool that, an opportunity still exists for you guys to get back together and be able to enjoy each other's company. I think that's really cool. really, yeah, I just remember finally like of just booking you guys in general, and it was always a blast. It was awesome. So
Yeah, we enjoyed. I think we stayed with you too.
I think so. I believe
So,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you met your family, and yeah, it was awesome.
My kids are teenagers now, which is nuts.
Yeah,
My,
right. I've got a 12-year-old. Yeah.
Dude,
Dude, that's bonkers.
I know it is bonkers. It's like, oh my gosh. I know. And it's weird because I'm only 44, but it's like, I do not feel 44.
Oh, dude, that's great. Oh, and before I forget, I just came to mind. Burlap Wolf King is Thomas Hench's bluegrass project that is
Sweet. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, he pressed some vinyl and stuff, the artwork and everything. The whole production was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet, dude. Awesome. So real quick before we close out, just tell me what you've been up to lately. I know you said marching arms and whatnot, but what are you doing work-wise and family-wise and all that?
I get to bump shoulders with manufacturing companies in my area. I work for a family-owned company. We basically it's called B&F Fastener Supply. So I run around and make sure I try to build relationships. I'm in sales, so I try to build relationships with people who are in manufacturing. And everybody who's got like a production line, they need to have hardware on site. They have to have parts to put into their widgets. And some of these are bigger than widgets, the things that are being built. But one of the coolest things I've gotten to work with a customer that builds like the roto graders that you see on Gold. Is it Gold Rush? Whatever tears up a road.
Yeah.
Those giant machines. And I get to sell a very high test rivet to them that's only made in one place here in America. And so there's obviously supply chain issues that have come into effect. So try to help people schedule out their production when the world goes crazy like it has. But it's really about building relationships more than it is about what you're selling at the end of the day. So the fact that I work with a family-owned company has allowed me to do that, and it's just been great. That started right before COVID, March 3rd, 2020 or whatever. We had literally gone and played a showcase in Vegas to try to get on Walkin' Festival. And flying out and flying back was when you started to hear like the world's going to be changing here. You knew that something was on the precipice. And after we played that show, that was one of the last shows. We played at the House of Blues and Bush. Yeah, we actually had a bottle of wine that Gavin Rosdale had written on.
I love that.
They played the night before. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Again, how did I get here? And that we found out when we left our hotel room at Circus, we found out that there weren't any shows anymore after the one that we had played. So that was crazy. But this has been cool. It allows me to get out into the community, which I love doing, and not have to sit in an office all the time. And during COVID, it was weird because you're trying to learn who people are, different places, just basically over the phone and email, which is a little harder than actually going and meeting them face to face. But I've been blessed with that, and working for good people and working with good people.
Awesome.
And then staying busy with the band and music stuff. Obviously, I'm still a gear nerd, so love the guitar gear. I've been getting to stay busy with some travel. Got to go see the Killers in Arizona a couple months ago. That was a lot of fun. That was a great show. And I think it was a show that was like 2 years. That was supposed to happen 2 years ago, and then it didn't happen until like 2 months ago. So they were playing catch up, and the energy was just like, everybody was kind of pent up, and it was so much fun. I'd never seen the Killers live, so I was ready for it. It was awesome.
Dude, Mr. Brightside live, whew, man, it is.
All of those Hot Fuss songs, and then
I know.
And then there's some in there that kind of creep up on you that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That one's great too. It was a wonderful night.
They were brilliant.
They were playing with the guy from the Smiths. He had
Johnny Marr.
Yeah, Johnny Marr, and so the Killers actually played, I think as part of their encore, they played 2 Smith songs. So that was awesome too. Yeah, that was awesome too. So
that is so dope, man. I saw them probably 8 years ago. I don't know.
Okay.
On the I forget which tour it was. Anyway, phenomenal. Like, just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, just
They're and it's so cool to see, like, their guitar player is awesome because he's always playing the Explorers. Like, he looks like he could be a metal guitar player, but he it's just they're they're one of those bands. They like, even from like hearing the stories of how they got together, just like
I know.
in Las Vegas, like looking for other musicians, and then that happened. The Killers kind of just accidentally happened. So cool. So
That's
awesome.
cool. Awesome, dude. Well, I really appreciate your time, man. I know it's been a while since we've got to catch up, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you worked hard at making this happen too. I appreciate your patience with me.
Yeah, dude. You know me. I go with the flow, and
Persistence gets you everything, man.
yeah, dude. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Well, I really, 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 really appreciate it, and I hope to talk to you soon, buddy.
Absolutely. Let's stay in touch. Have a great Thanksgiving and wonderful holiday season. And yeah, we'll have to. Geez, if I ever get down into Florida, man, I'm looking you up for sure.
Please do. I got plenty of room.
Awesome. Awesome. Same to you, dude. Same to you.
All right, buddy. Have a good holiday.
Take care. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hey guys, it's Jeremy Allen Gould with the Who's to Say podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this latest episode with John Parker from the band Nodes of Ranvier. It was a good conversation about the past, kind of how he began his venture into music and what he's doing now. So it was a really cool opportunity to catch up. And John's an amazing musician, amazing dude, and I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. So looking forward to who we have coming up in the future. So stay tuned. And with that said, guys, who's to say?